Hello.
Hi there.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good, everyone. This episode of Trauma Rockstars, I'm so excited because Monica Kaufman, she's a financial advisor, but she also founded the Harmony Wealth Academy. And she's got an amazing story of why she did this because she said most people do not understand the financial system. We'll dig deep about this a little further about how trauma does affect your finances and things
Yep.
like that. And you've been through your own journey. And when we chatted, I was so intrigued and touched and inspired by just this short conversation that we initially had. Thank you so much. Welcome to the Trauma Rockstar community. And Monica, why don't you start by just sharing a little bit about your past and how you got to be where you are in the academy and everything?
Okay, so I am somebody, I came from a family, my parents got divorced when I was very little. So that's a little bit of trauma. And it was not an amicable divorce. We'll just leave it at that. When I got married, I was looking for somebody my father had always said, marry your best friend. And I did, or at least I thought I did, but I didn't understand. I knew that his father had died when he was very young. I knew that he had a brother who had autism. I knew that there were issues. But I didn't understand the extent of the issues and how that affected him. So, in 2001, when my father was dying, Jeff had his first issue of depression. Initially, he bounced back from that. He really recovered. But what I didn't understand was when the psychiatrist told me flat out that it would be a lifelong battle and that he could not rely just on meds, that he had to do the work. So there's talk therapy, there's meds, and then there was cognitive therapy that he was going to need to do, really sort of take ownership and custody of the way he thinks. I didn't process what that was going to mean. And so the last 25, 26 years have been colored by this whole struggle. And what it did was it crystallized a couple of things to me. One, money is just a set of tools in your hands. And that's when I became a financial advisor. And two, what happens at the end of the day with your money is a reflection of what's going on inside of you. And since it's an extension of you, think of it as an extension of your hand. What goes on inside of you, if it's fear, it's going to show up. There are all sorts of things and triggers that come along the way, and in many ways, we're given an operating script around money when we're children. And that's really sort of solidified by about age 6 based on the research. So you don't realize how that comes through. So I have seen people as an advisor who had modest incomes, but who had strong money scripts that were healthy and a money identity that was healthy, who built out their financial freedom and retired early with a tremendous amount of money and the ability to do whatever they needed to do for themselves or their families. And then I've seen people with high educations and high incomes not get there. And so the other thing is like I saw that and then I saw how the trauma affected me and then I saw how trauma affected other people around me. And again, that's an emotional response. And so we go back to default sort of operating scripts on a whole bunch of different issues. And that affects everything within you and in your hands, including your money.
Mhm.
So you can't really just learn and develop knowledge about the financial system, the outside system, and have it work when haven't done the work on the inside systems.
So true. And I think we talked about too, like the material things that people, that we talked quite a bit about that and how that's a reflection
Right.
of where you are mentally. Now,
Yep.
I'm not saying like there's people that can't afford the Lambos and Ferraris. I'm not saying that. There are, but it's kind of like that there's people that have them that can't afford them. It's like everything they've got is into so
Right.
it's
Right.
interesting. When did you tell me you were working for Merrill Lynch, right?
Long time ago, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a
that's
long
where I
time.
started.
Yeah. So how was that experience with Merrill Lynch?
Okay, so Merrill Lynch at the time considered themselves the sort of the Marine Corps of the financial industry. And depending on how you feel about the Marine Corps, that may affect your perception of it. But they had higher standards and higher expectations, and they required more of us. They required more general knowledge, more economic knowledge, more financial knowledge. But one day I was there, and my branch manager knocked on the door and said, "Tell me about your brother in law." I'm like, "Well, I have three. Which one are you talking about?" And he said, "The one with autism." And I said, "Why?" And he looked me in the eyes and he said, "Well, this one person called in and he wanted to know if anybody in the branch did special needs financial advisory." Short story, he was a psychologist working with a family who needed to start planning because they had a family member who was never going to be financially independent and they needed a plan for that. He knew somebody from the community who knew of me and my family and knew that I had a brother in law with autism. So
Mhm.
he looked at me and said, "I guess you're learning special needs financial advisory." And I said, "Okay." And because of that, I wound up being introduced to a very, very, very significant lawyer. And he had been responsible for helping to write the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania's rules on special needs trusts way back when. And he sat down with me on a Sunday and said, "Okay, tell me about you and why everybody wanted us to meet." And so I told him, and then we started talking about my family, and I mentioned Jeff. Jeff was at a low point at that point, and he looked me in the eyes and said, "Okay, I will train you on this, and I will train you on estate planning." He said, "However, you have to promise me that you will listen to my story about what happened in my family, and you will never allow yourself to get to the point that my father got to." And essentially what happened with him was his mother had had some very severe mental health issues. His father took care of the family, took everything on himself, and it destroyed him at the end. And he wound up, once the kids were grown, he wound up committing suicide. And he made me promise that I would never let myself get to that point. And I didn't think about it. I was arrogant. I thought, I won't get there. Don't worry. It'll be fine. And then I realized at one point, about 7 years ago, that things were ugly. My husband's health was again in a bad place, and he was in a bad place, and I realized, the stress of work, the stress of being at home, I couldn't live with it. I couldn't live with it anymore. It was eating away at me, and I had to
Mhm.
preserve me. And so the point is you have these traumas, and what they are is they compound, and they're like acid on your psyche. They're like acid on your well-being. And if you don't protect that, if you don't repair that, you can't pour from an empty cup. Spiritually and emotionally and physically, if you don't take care of you, you can't be there for anybody else. So you have to start with you.
Right. That's got to be so hard because, when people, we all have our issues and our baggage and whatever you want to call it. And it could be a positive thing to have those because we learn and grow from them. But to have to take on all that and then not realizing the financial effect that it has on yourself as well as everyone else around you, that's
Yeah,
got to be a tough pill to swallow.
it is. And there was somebody back in Philadelphia, a religious man, who said something very, very ugly to me. And basically, I'd gone to him for help. Jeff had had a bad reaction to some medication. And I went to him and I said, I need to hire somebody to help me with the task. And he said, I'm not going to help you. And I said, why? He said, you're codependent. You need to leave this relationship. He said, you need to leave. And I'm going to tell everybody not to help you.
Yeah, that
And I
was,
looked and I cried.
yeah.
Okay. But here's the thing that I want to say, like, as much as that hurt and as much as that was the wrong thing at that time, what he did, I understand why he said that. He'd seen too many families try to help and really hurt themselves at the same time. And so I understood the way he did that was the wrong way.
Mhm.
And you could have said, "Look, I'll help you," but if I think about it, you should have said, "All right, come on in and we'll talk about this." And you should have said, "Okay, we're gonna talk about this in the context of I will help you in this one time find this person," because I wasn't asking for charity. I
Yeah,
wasn't asking for financial help. I'm going to help you on this one issue, but we need to talk about what the long term looks like. Kind of like what that attorney said to me. If
yeah.
you ever get to the point where you see it's corroding it yourself, you have to promise me you'll do something about it. And that was, he should have said, look, I've seen too many people in your situation. I've seen this happen. Let me tell you about what happens if you don't take care of you. And if you don't have a hard boundary where if you cross it, you leave. You have to
Mhm,
make sure. I think he had the right intent, but very poor execution, but it hurt.
mhm.
And that's the other piece of it. Like, you have to understand when you're dealing with trauma, when you live inside a situation where somebody's ill or there's a mental health challenge or there's addiction, being inside of that is stressful, and as that builds, it becomes more and more traumatic. You have to deal with the consequences of that, and if you don't understand the financial system while you're dealing with this, you've got another source of stress and another source of worry. Like it or not, money is the tool with which you use to provide for yourself and to do things for yourself and for the people who matter. Period. It's a tool. It's not good, it's not bad. What you do with it is a reflection of what's going on inside of you. So, my thing is maintain your tools. You don't allow your tools, whatever your tools are, whether it's your computer, whether it's your car, doesn't matter. Even your tools in your kitchen, you take care of your tools so that they're there for you. Same thing with your money.
And what's the biggest stress in any relationship? Money.
Money. Mhm.
And health. Money, if you don't, your health is obviously number one, but your financial health is super important. If somebody reaches out to you and they have like no, they haven't even started this journey. They're just they've been through trauma, they've got all this going on. Like, what is your first conversation you have with people?
It depends. It really just depends. It's a question of, okay, first of all, why did you reach out? What was it that prompted you to reach out? And frequently, here's the piece of everything that I found out. It's like nobody really cares how much I know until they know how much I care. So until they trust me enough to
Mhm.
tell me what's really going on, what the prompt is, why they bothered, people are busy. Why'd you pick up the phone to call me? Why'd you send me the email?
Yeah.
Okay. So if until I know what that is, then we can't address it. And sometimes
Mhm.
if people aren't ready to say it, it's like, look, the money is the money and we can deal with that. That's the easy part. We have to deal with the emotional drivers behind it. And I've said this to people over and over again. You can only go where your mind has gone before you. So if you can't tell me where your mind is and what's really behind the issue, all the education in the world is not going to help. It's just not. I mean, I'm happy to let you go through it, but I don't see the reason to let you fail. So when you're ready to talk to me, we can go through this.
Yeah. It's gotta be, like, for people listening, my listeners especially, because, everybody's been through trauma in their life. I mean, I don't think I know a person that hasn't. I
Well, some
really.
people don't admit to it, but that's another topic.
Yeah, there's that, but, are there some people that have, and they just float through life and they're fine. It doesn't affect them like it would me, for instance, which
Right.
is, everybody's reactive and different to different things, but the biggest struggle, and I mean, I think, is owning it,
Right.
owning it, because what would you say to, like, a 70-year-old that maybe reached out to you and has no financial plans at all, and
Depends on it. I mean, I've worked with people who were in their 70s who had money, okay, but their trauma from the past, whatever it was actually interfering in their today. So there's always a today. What is it about the past that's come into the day that has made things so uncomfortable that you're not willing to sort of fight through it? Sometimes it's the, I don't know how much I have. I don't know how much I can afford to live on. I don't know how much this is. I had a bad first marriage and then I got remarried and I had a ton of debt and I had been a single parent, whatever it is.
yeah,
Okay.
there's a lot of that.
Right. And so then it's a question of, okay, do I need to do financial planning for you? Do we need to actually figure out where you are? And I've seen people who have a lot of money who are really super nervous about this because for whatever reason, they didn't have it. Something happened in the past that left a traumatic mark.
Mm,
And it's a question of, okay, what do we need to get you there? So sometimes it's literally just learning the system. And once they have the reins in their hands, these very capable people realize, oh, I'm okay financially. And then that ripples its way through. The way I look at this is really simple. When I decided to go down this journey of creating the academy, I really had to map things out. I'm very visual. I had to sort of have a flow. And what it came down to is, do you believe that you are expected or that you were created to actually master or to control your financial future? If your finances are there to just provide for yourself and for your family, this is a part of who you are as an independent person. I look at freedom as a flipboard or just another way of saying responsible. You are responsible for yourself in your present and in your future.
mm,
So when I did that, I was sort of like, where does that come from? So that comes from, for me, a spiritual root. It comes down, and the first place where you experience is physically. Then it goes to emotionally, then to what you think and how you think. And
mhm.
eventually down the line, it goes into money. But it's the same pattern repeated over and over again. And so it's one of those things where it's like, okay, if you've been threatened in one area, it will probably show up in another area.
Yeah,
Okay. It's just,
yeah. It's not gonna hide.
no, it's not gonna hide. And again, I think of it as, okay, it's a set of tools in your hand, so it's an extension of you. The hammer doesn't have any power on its own. You have to either activate it if it's a jackhammer that you can plug in, or but if it's a regular hammer, it has to be in someone's hand to be used.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, what's going on with the hand and the mind that's controlling the hand make the hammer do what it's doing?
What was it that you told me something, and it was shocking and refreshing at the same time to hear it about what you had said about what a financial advisor's job is to do and what you do different,
Okay.
because that really resonated with me because I've experienced that.
Okay, so financial advisors are trained 99 times out of 100 to do manage the money you already have. And it may help you grow it and they may help you build on it, but they people come to them because they have money that they want to build on and invest on. The question is, there are a lot of people who make a tremendous amount of money, but for the emotional reasons, the operating system is malfunctioning, that they don't have the cash to invest. So until you get to the point where you have money to do something with, they're really not compensated or trained to help you.
Yeah, to help you get there.
Right. And then there
Yeah.
are these financial coaches who are coming out. Some of them are very well intentioned, some are not. Most of them are not trained. They're not supervised. The certifications are minimal and they're certainly not like overseen. So it's not like a financial advisor where there are regulators looking at what we do. Or it's not like the Certified Financial Planning Board where when I make a mistake, I'm going to hear from them. It's one of those things where you stand up and you say, okay, so it's completely unregulated. How do you get the advice you need? There are lots of things online, there are lots of sources online, and a lot of them have positive information. But one, how do you implement it? And two, how do you break the habits from before? How do you break the emotional impulses that redirect you some way? And then the other piece is, do you believe that you have the right to do it? What do you believe about yourself, and how does that flow through to your money thing? It's
Mm,
very creepy. I was working on something on AI for myself. I was just sort of working through and editing through, and the AI challenged me. It's like, "Wait a second, what's your money script?" We all have them. So, for example, my mother grew up on the wrong side of the tracks in Shaker Heights, Ohio. She was born in '38, and, her parents didn't have a lot. They had almost nothing during the Depression. So, all the resources went towards her brother and not towards her. And I don't think my family's the only one. And my grandparents loved my mother, and they realized later on in life how they made that mistake. But my mother
mm,
really, 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 really had to push forward on her own. She got her first job between 2nd and 3rd grade.
yeah.
So for her, if she saw me on this podcast wearing what I'm wearing, she'd be like, "Monica, you can dress better than that." All right. And it was, it's you put yourself together, you wear this. And whenever I would start a new thing, I'd be like, "Oh, I need a new outfit." And then I stopped and realized where that came from. Do I really need that?
Yeah.
Okay. Then you also realize that there are a lot of people, for example, 70% of all the luxury items that are sold in the US are bought by the middle class and below. People who have money aren't interested in projecting out money. They just don't care. They're not interested in your approval. Okay. They have what they have and it doesn't matter.
And that right there shows a lot about what their relationship with money is.
Hmm. It's a lot healthier.
Because yeah, it's a lot healthier where it's not as flashy. I mean, there's people that flash but
Hmm.
it's okay. I mean, that those people are fine too, but I think like a lot of people, I know a lot of people that literally lost everything because of the pandemic.
Right.
Between the pandemic with their business, divorce,
Yeah.
literally everything they've worked for is gone. So they're starting from scratch, like with nothing. I mean,
And
literally nothing, and the attorney fees from
right.
whatever they were going through, the attorneys are the only ones that make money. Seems like so for people, there's so many people like that out there right now. And that was a trauma in itself, what the whole world went through during, that
Yeah.
time. And we're still kind of feeling it right now.
Oh, I think we're going to feel it for a while.
Quite a while.
Yeah,
What
and I think children are gonna feel it more, and I think the elderly have definitely felt it.
Yeah, oh, yeah. And a lot of elderly lost everything. I mean, the
Mhm.
retirements, like, pensions gone. What do you say to in people like that and for the younger generation do to learn from this, you know?
Well, that's the whole thing. It's funny, I used to go into these networking events, and you'd see people come out, and they would make these presentations, and it bothered me. There was one event that I went to in another state, and I won't get into what they presented, but it was something that when I heard the presentation, I literally got up and walked out. And a friend and a mentor and a coach of mine said, "Monica, why are you leaving? You need to be there." And I said, "You don't understand. I can't be there while they're saying this." And this person challenged me, and I had to explain it out and work through it. And now, a couple of years later, this person understands it. Okay. There's a lot of people out there, there's a lot of bad information, and no
Mhm.
one cares more about your financial condition than you. So,
Yeah.
what I would say to people is the more you understand and the less you rely on others to affect your indecision, you have to be the CEO of your life. And
Mhm.
a big part of that is understanding your money, period. And what that means is you can't leave it in somebody else's hands. You can't just trust. There are a lot of people who literally trust their financial advisor, their trust. Oh, my buddy does this. Oh, my friend does this. And the answer is these people work for you. And when you have a business and you've had an employee, have you ever hired a friend to work for you? And how has that worked out for you?
Right. Or a family member.
Right. Okay. So it's really difficult. It's harsh. It hurts relationships. Business is business. Family is family. Friendship is friendship. You don't intermingle.
Right.
Okay. Until the more confident you get, the stronger you are in your knowledge base. What's intuition, by the way? I heard the greatest thing, the definition of intuition. Do you know what it is?
It's your that little voice inside you
Right.
that's guiding you, right?
Right, but what it really is compressed experience.
Oh,
It's all the experience you've had in a related or connected issue compressed that allows you to make a decision very quickly. So it's
okay.
that emotional intelligence increasing. Okay. And once you learn to listen to that and when to listen to it and when not, your decisions get more natural and more comfortable. You have to work at this and acquire it. So there's this thing called grit, GRIT. And my version of that on the financial side is gratitude, resilience, intuition, and tenacity. And that intuition is based on experience, and the resilience is based on using structure so that if you get knocked down, you can get back up. Or you don't even get knocked down. You may stop for a second, but you're still able to proceed down the path. And what happens is people don't use the structure to build out protection. So they get knocked around, they get knocked down, and it's harder to get back up. And they also don't build up tenacity. And there are different reasons why you would have the ability to hang on and take risks. So when you learn to manage the system and understand how to use it for your benefit, you're less vulnerable. And then the reason why gratitude's at the front is that it's the ultimate biohack. The more grateful you are, the more you realize you will eventually realize you have things to be grateful for. And we know from the research that people who are financially independent, who've achieved it, okay, and 99% of the time it happens in one generation. It's not because they inherited it. Most of the time, the founder builds it and then the next generation inherits it and spends between 60 to 70%. And then the grandchildren wind up taking the rest of it. And at the end of that, less than 3% still have the
Mhm.
wealth intact. So the ones who build it also tend to understand that the people matter. They have better, more stable relationships with their spouses. They're involved in the community and they understand that they can do things that really matter and are meaningful that don't cost a ton of money. If they want to spend money, they can and they do, but they don't have to. Okay. Like what matters? Going and hanging out.
Like a need, they really know a need versus a want. They really can hone in
Correct.
on that.
But they also hone in on the people that are around them. They surround themselves with people who share their values. Okay.
Like-minded.
They don't have to agree with them. They don't have to have the same amount of money. They don't have to have the same amount of education, but they do have to have the same values. And they also have to have the values are expressed in what they do. I have this argument with people all the time. It's like, look, I understand people, words matter. Words really do matter. I get it. And there have been times when I've used words that I'm not really proud of.
Mm,
But it's not a but, it's an and. Actions matter more than words. So first you look at somebody's actions, then you look at the words, and then you see if there's a disconnect. And then if you have to actually go any further, you see where the trend is. Okay, these were the actions in the past. These were the words. This is what they're doing now. Can they maintain? And it sounds very judgmental, but look, the reality is if somebody's in your world, they're going to reflect a part of you and they're going to affect you. You have to maintain that boundary and set the bar high.
yeah. And
I've met quite a few people who have made a tremendous amount of money, and they weren't looking for people who necessarily had as much as they did. What they were looking for were people who shared their values.
mhm. Yeah.
So
And so it's kind of like what's that saying? You're only as good as your 5 closest people around you or something like, you know what I'm saying?
yeah, I've heard that. I heard of something else. Somebody said this. You wanna tell how God feels about you? Look at the people around you and how they feel about you and how they approach you. Okay. And I thought that was a great way to think about it. It's sort of
Mhm.
a, you want to build peace around you. And that
Yeah.
doesn't mean shutting people out because I look at things. People really need to zero in on what is important. If you wanted to turn the pandemic, all the misery, and say, okay, where were the gifts? What it should have been is to understand that the people matter more than some of the other stuff that was nonsense. We were
Yeah.
distracted with a whole bunch of nonsense. I don't need for people to agree with me on everything.
Yeah.
Okay, I really don't. And in fact, I don't want that. I want people who challenge me and who say, "Hey, okay, I understand how you think. Can you understand how I think? And let's see where there's common ground."
Do you feel that, and I've tell me what how you feel about this. I've heard so much over the years from gurus and motivational speakers and stuff like that. The more you give, the more you get.
Yeah, I do believe that. I do believe
Okay.
it. But I believe there's also boundaries with that because you have to understand something. You can't keep giving and pouring from an empty cup. So if you're not receiving, you have to stop and ask, "What are you doing?" Okay.
Mhm.
I'm not in love with codependency. I look at it and I'm like, okay, no, no, thank you. But I do realize that you do give. I do realize that we are expected to give. My thing is when I give, I do give to people where they know, but I also do believe that I want to give in such a way that I'm helping someone to help themselves.
Yeah,
Okay.
what they're doing with that.
Right. I really want it's important to me, like, for example, without certain basic things, there's nothing that can happen. Okay. People need to eat. People need to be able to have a roof over their heads. I can't help everyone, and it's not my job to help everybody. But if I can help somebody, then I do it. Does that
So,
make sense?
yeah, like somebody's listening to this, you have $1,000 in your savings account. That doesn't mean go and donate that money. You're
No,
gonna
it
get
doesn't.
2,000 back. That's not what we're saying.
There is a concept that you are expected to give, but there's
Yes.
expectations and there's limits. And the idea behind it is you do give, and within that, okay,
Mhm.
from my spiritual tradition, what you're doing is you're making room for God to give more, but
Mhm.
you still have to put your effort in. So, yeah, there's a part of me that absolutely would love to win the mega billion, whatever it is.
Yeah,
Okay. There's a part of me that would love to win the lottery. But if that happens, okay, or when that happens, you won't see me stop working.
right.
And you won't see me do certain things. I'm freely gonna admit it. Maybe a few things will change. Maybe I'll go to the gym with a trainer more often, but beyond that, a lot of this is not going to change. What
Mhm.
has to change is how I use it, and I have to use it intelligently. A lot of people who win the lottery wind up 2 things. They don't understand that their safety is at risk because all of a sudden they've got a big, huge dollar sign in neon
Yeah.
flashing over their heads. That's part of the reason why, for example, like I will tell people who even have modest estates when they're dealing with this, is like, look, create a trust. Do not, and at least have a will, but preferably create a trust. Why? Because if you're leaving any type of money to your children, don't let it be in the public domain. Don't let them see that number. Don't let the public see that number with the name.
Yeah.
Okay? It's nobody's business.
So, for people, I guess, that might be listening that don't understand what a trust is, what is
Yeah.
that?
It's a legal entity that allows you to say, okay, it's not mine, but I could be the grantor and I'm creating this and I'm doing this for the benefit of somebody or something. And it's an entity that means when you die, you typically have to at least go in front of the court and deal with the estate. Now, if there's not enough money, jurisdiction is different. You may not have to, but if you don't have your documents done, then your family members have to go in front of a judge and say, "This is who I am. This is the person." Each state has different differences. What happens with those cases is it winds up being a lot more time and a lot more money than it would have been to get a will done properly. Another
Mhm.
thing that happens is there are these internet-based packages on legal documents, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't, and you really have to watch the directions, and it pays to actually have somebody who has the legal training and the license to review it to say, "Hey, this will work. You're okay for this jurisdiction." Because if it doesn't work, it gets thrown out, and then it becomes a lot more expensive to do it. And one of the things that happens with trust, like I've seen situations, it's like, all right, so you're going to be leaving quite a bit of money to your minor aged male child. Okay. Do you want this child to get it at 18 or 21? Do you want somebody else to know that this child's going to get it at 18 or 21? Do you
Yeah.
want to put some conditions on it and some controls on this? Do you want to
Yeah.
protect them? Okay. It makes sense. Another reason to do it I'll never forget this. A call from somebody, young exec. The first reason why she called was because she had purchased um, a a will from a program, and she didn't seek legal counsel, and her husband was like, What are we doing?" And so she wound up on the phone with me, and I said, "Okay, tell me what your plan is to do this." She said, "Well, I'm gonna leave everything to my brother, and my brother will take care of my kids." And I said, "Okay, here's the problem with this." I said, "I'm sure your brother's a lovely guy. Is he married?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Great. Do you like your sister-in-law?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Okay, great." Attacking them, but they still have a 50% chance of not making it through and getting divorced. That's just a
Mhm.
statistic. She got very upset. I said, and then the other problem is, and I've seen this, a moral obligation to take care of your children is not a legal obligation to take care of your children. And if something happens to the money, your children have no recourse. Or if they don't want to spend the money on the children, there's nothing anybody can do. Okay. Well, are you accusing? I'm not accusing anybody. I'm saying that as much as you love your brother and you trust him, the wise and responsible thing to do is to protect the kids no matter what happens. So, and I told her this. I've seen cases where people have not had adequate property and casualty insurance and gotten into car accidents and not done their planning correctly and wind up losing a large portion of what they've built up over their lifetimes.
Mm.
Okay. Really? It's insane. So if you give that money to them, that's theirs. They get into a car accident, they have a $5 million judgment against them. That money goes out the window.
It's gone.
It's gone. So it's easier to do an ounce of planning. Well, this program I'm in doesn't believe in that. This is why you have attorneys. They're on the hook legally for the advice they give you. You need to actually seek competent legal help. It's not my
Mhm.
job to give you that, but I'm the issue spotter and I'll say like you need to do this. And I saw one woman, she didn't understand that her daughter had some mental health challenges and had developed a drug problem. She thought the drugs were the same as they were in the '80s when she used them. No, they're not the same. And her daughter has a mental health issue, which arguably she doesn't. And she was using the drugs to compensate. Well, the girl went out one day to a party, got drunk, handed the car keys over to a friend of hers who was more drunk than she was. And because it was their car, the mother was liable for the accident and sent a family of four to the hospital. This mother had insurance, but she had cut back on the insurance and she had gotten rid of her umbrella coverage, which would have amplified it. So now she's got one lawsuit. And then a few months later, she gave her daughter her old car and bought herself a new one. Well, her daughter went and bought one of those magic pens, or actually more than one, and she had them in the car with a friend of hers from school. She got pulled over by the police and said those are illegal because they have THC in them, which they did. So now the girl's got a legal problem, and that's going to ripple over into the damages and the financial problem, and the mother never dealt with it.
Mm.
So why did she give up an umbrella policy that cost her $169 a year for $1 million worth of additional coverage? Why did she scale back her property and casualty? Now she's got a problem where they're suing her for a tremendous amount of money from the first accident. And all of this is a reflection of the fact, yes, I know the kids have accidents, no question. She didn't deal with the behavior of her daughter. And so that ripples into her financial life. And she was in her late 50s when this happened. She couldn't afford this.
Right.
Okay. So I guess what I'm saying to you is, all of these decisions, it's not the same. You have to take an honest and direct look at everything to understand what you're dealing with. It's a challenge. Go ahead.
Something similar just happened to my family. My poor uncle passed away, and he left everything to his daughter,
Okay.
which makes sense, leave everything, and he had millions. Well, not knowing that nobody thought that his daughter was gonna die soon after he did,
Oh,
but she
no.
did. She didn't have a will.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, everything was left to my father and his other brother, who had
Okay.
also passed away because my father was next of kin. Well,
Right.
because there were no affairs in order, there was no trust, there was no nothing. And this was in the state of California, so don't even get me started about the state of California, 'cause
It's an expensive place to make mistakes.
yeah, and they've got their own issues anyway, but, like, the state of California started researching family members, and his entire estate ended up going to, like, 28 different people. people that had never met. And I'm like, when are the courts gonna stop? Is this going to the fifth cousin, fourth removed over? It was crazy. And it ended up having to go to like 28 different people.
And
And
the
it
way
took years.
I have seen people
It was insane.
I had a colleague die from former colleague die from a motorcycle accident at the age of 26. Okay. I have a son who wound up having an accident, not a car accident or a motorcycle accident, a running accident while he was in college. And what happened was he needed medical care. And thankfully, he was conscious enough to say, "This is my mom. Please talk to her on my behalf." If he hadn't have been, we would have had a legal problem and it would have been extremely expensive. And, at the time he was 19 years old. So
Yeah.
when you hit, and oh, by the way, because of FERPA, federal law, I would not have had the ability to talk to the university on his behalf. I wouldn't have had the ability to deal with his financial stuff, nothing.
Because he was an
Okay.
adult.
Because he was an adult. So when you turn 18 years old, you need to start having documents. And it's
Yeah.
a lot less expensive to deal with this and to get those documents done than it is to not have them done and need them. I refer to as the Murphy's Law rule. If I need them, if I have them, I will not need them. If I
Yeah.
need them and don't have them, there's going to be a problem.
Yeah, and it's so and people don't expect things like this to happen, but they do. They happen every day, and, like, for instance, with my uncle, of the 28 people that all of his money ended up going to, only, like, 8 people actually knew him. He didn't even meet these other 20 people.
I know of another case. There's a woman that I've known her all my life, literally. Okay. And in fact, her daughter and I met in mommy and me cooking classes, like when we were 3.
Cute.
Yeah, which my mother described as let's see if we can get more flour on mommy than in the bowl. Okay.
Oh
That's
my
kind of the way
gosh.
that worked. But, okay. And I'd known her for years and years and years. And she always talked about a cousin of hers, her favorite cousin, who was this lawyer, and she thought he was fabulous. She thought the world of him. And he was an estate lawyer. And he had a website up that said, don't leave your families unprotected. Get a trust and have a will.
Yeah.
Guess who died without a will and a trust?
He did,
He had a heart attack on New Year's Eve
and he never had a trust or
and he didn't
anything.
have his documents done. They had to go to a judge to get an order to get the door open, to get a locksmith to go in there and bust on the door because he had 2 rescue pit bulls that were elderly that needed medical care that she had to get out of there. And it wound up being a situation where there was a challenge to the will that came out of nowhere where people claimed that they were related. Why do this to your family?
Yeah. And people listening to this, please, no family expects these things to happen.
No,
Even a 19-year-old, is considered an adult, but yet you still need to have things in place. And there's so many horror stories of these things happening. And it goes beyond dealing with your trauma. Like you have
right.
to have these conversations. Like she said, that woman had a umbrella policy. It was $169 a year would have
Yep.
protected her,
Yep.
and it ended up completely probably destroying them. And
Yeah, and why do that to yourself? Really, that's penny wise and pound foolish. I am not someone who believes in overdoing it on insurance.
yeah,
Okay. I am, but it's just one of those things. And here's what I say to people all the time. And I said this to my mother and my stepfather 14 months ago. 14 months ago. It was let's leave the assets aside. Let's leave the money aside. You're going to use it and be well. What I really want for you to do is to take ownership and take charge and say what you want and what you don't want. And the more specific you are and the more intentional you are about this, the easier it will be. So when things get rough and emotions are high and people are scared and people are upset, we know what you want us to do and what you don't want us to do. And this is really you're taking ownership. You're in charge. You're stating, I need this. I mean, it can be as easy and as stupid as at one point there was a situation where I had to, Beth had a medical issue and I wound up having to go about 2.5 hours away. I had no choice. I had to get this done. And while I was gone, I had to sign a letter of authorization allowing 2 or 3 people to be able to call in the event my kids who were at school had an emergency so that somebody could pick them up.
yeah,
Okay. And I did that. And it's one of those things where it's like you don't realize something happens, you have a car crash, you need to give somebody the authority to pick up your kids at school or in daycare. Why? So that Child Protective Services doesn't get called.
right.
I had a client once who very successful, lived on the West Coast and would spend part of his year in Hawaii. And he had 2 underage children. And I said, look, You're in two separate states. You don't have a will. You don't have anybody as guardian for those kids. If you and your wife go out and something horrible happens, who has the right to take charge of your minor children while you're in Hawaii?
Yeah. And
Because
it
if
things
you don't,
happen.
right. And I said, look, here's the thing, Murphy's Law. If you have it, you won't need it. If you don't have it, you will.
Yeah.
Okay. So think of it as Murphy's Law and protection against needing it. The other thing that I've said is that, the more you learn about money and take charge of this, the more you can teach your children. And by teaching and by doing these things, what you're doing is you're saying, I love you enough to be uncomfortable in the moment, spend a little bit of money and actually get this done so that you're protected. And let me show you how to take charge of your future so that you can do this for yourself and for your own kids.
It
People who have money who train their children wind up in a much better place. And it's amazing to me. And I'm going to say this, and I want everybody to hear this, okay? 80% of the population doesn't know how to use the system effectively, okay? 80%. That's
mhm.
what the research shows. And it's been like this for a very long time. When I started the academy, it was because I realized that we were in our fourth, maybe fifth generation of this, and that was 6 years ago. That's why I do this. Because if I put the power back in your hands, you'll make better decisions for you. I trust you to make better decisions for you than I trust anybody else to make better decisions for you. Okay. I want you in charge of your life. I
Mhm.
believe you can do it. I've seen people from all walks of life do it. I've seen people choose not to do it despite the income and the education, and they paid for it, and their children paid for it. There's no reason to make life harder than it is.
It can seem to people I wanna 2 things, and the first thing I wanna just add to this, and then I wanna ask you a question, is in addition to the estate planning
Yeah,
with the trust and the will and all that, please, people, have a healthcare proxy.
right.
Okay,
That's part of
please.
it.
That's part of it. Like, you have to people have to know that. Like, I've gone through that with my parents, people you
Mhm.
need to have that and know what your wishes are. But with learn going back to taking charge and nobody, like you said, you're the only person that can know what's best for you. But
Right.
it seems to so many people, it's so intimidating.
It is.
And
It is.
it's so,
It is.
like, overwhelming to try, like, stock people are like, "Stocks? I don't understand stocks and Bitcoin." Like, I'm gonna be honest with you, Monica, I have no idea what Bitcoin is. I don't understand it, the whole digital
Yep.
assets, I don't. I'm not gonna pretend I do, but, like, even people like, I'm sure people are, like, even with stocks and the stock market and all that, like,
Mhm.
how do you ease into that?
You take it one step at a time and you give yourself permission to say, this wasn't taught to me.
Mhm.
Chances are the people around me when I was a child didn't learn it either. Again, the reason why I say that 80% number is that all of a sudden you realize it's not your fault. Okay? And it's not that I'm placing blame on your parents. And it's not that I'm placing blame on your children, on your school. Why? Because the school's job is to teach reading, writing, math, history, science, and maybe a little bit of social skills. And I think we put too much pressure on them. We need to learn this, okay? And
Mhm.
if we can learn it and model it, then and our children can learn it, they'll be better off and you'll be better off. But the most
Right.
important thing is, I mean, I don't want people to consider this to be criticism. And my mother and my stepfather and I sat down and talked about 14, 15 months ago.
Yeah.
My mother and stepfather had both very well educated people, very, very bright people, hard
Mhm.
people, responsible people. Okay. And I remember sitting down and talking to them. And I realized something. They had both had bad experiences because they had both gotten divorced, both had issues with the legal system. It had been expensive, it had been stressful, they didn't get good outcomes. And I looked at this and said, okay, this is why they don't want to actually learn about another part of the legal system that they're participating in. And so I get it. I mean, it's like, why would I volunteer to spend time with lawyers if I've had bad experiences with lawyers in the past?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, who does that? But it's one of those things where I sit there and I say, okay, if you don't know, then you're subject and you're vulnerable. So if I look at you and I say, okay, what do you want in your life? Just leave the other stuff alone. Let's not even talk about how you get there, but what do you want your life to look like? The best thing that you can do for yourself is to take charge. And I call this, I don't call it estate planning, I call it personal self ownership.
Mhm.
I want you to take ownership of your financial identity, your credit. I want you to take ownership of where your stuff is and how it's managed. I want you to take ownership of who has the privilege to be on your team and work for you. And it is a
Mhm.
privilege. I listen to people like, I don't know if this person will take me. I don't know if I have enough money. I'm like, do you not understand that it's a privilege to be your advisor? Okay. It's not their money, it's yours.
Yeah.
They should feel like it's a privilege to be your advisor and to have you as a client. Okay. And if they lose that appreciation for you and the privilege of what they're doing because it's your money is really just your ability to take care of yourself. Find somebody else. You don't
Mhm.
need that ego. And I look at this and I say, okay, if you talk to somebody and they give you gibberish, or they give you something that sounds like it came from a manual, they don't own it. So when I talk to somebody and it's like, okay, what's a stock? Or when I train somebody who's new to the industry, a stock is a tiny little ownership piece of a company. What's a bond? A bond is an IOU. Okay. So it can come from a government, it can come from a company. That's what a bond is. And people
Mhm.
look at me and they're like,
It's not that intimidating.
no, and if you can't explain it in regular words, you don't own it.
Yeah.
And I need for you to understand it so that you can make decisions about what you're being told or what's
Mhm.
in your account, okay? Period, the end. And so it's for me, this is a way for me to put the power and the control back in your hands. I never want to see the fear that I saw during the start of the pandemic shutdown. I never
Yeah.
want to see that.
Right.
Can't fix it for everybody, can't fix it across the board, but if I can help people take ownership and take control of their finances is a way of taking control and ownership of their lives, then that's a contribution and the ripple effect goes out from there.
Yeah, and you're saying just the very first step of that is just identifying, like, your relationship with money
Yes.
and understanding it, like you said, that we know by 6.
Yep.
So, it's a learned behavior.
It's installed by other people and
Mhm.
it reflects their beliefs. It does not necessarily reflect who you are. It's very funny when you see an operating system or a money identity, okay, or a money archetype manifest in somebody, and you see them as tremendously capable throughout all the other areas of their lives. And in this area, they're really struggling. And I'm looking and I'm like, okay, let's talk about where that came from and once we identified the archetypes, they're like, "Oh," I said, "Okay, so 6-year-old you is in charge of this. This was installed by somebody else who may have meant well. They had their own experiences with money. They're not trying to handicap you. They gave you the best that they could, but that operating system needs to be upgraded and reflect who you are as a whole.
Yeah.
I need for you to lovingly ask the 6-year-old to sit down and allow the adult you to take over,
Yeah,
okay?"
it's funny you mentioned because I still feel like even, like, my grandparents, I remember my grandmother, she grew up during the Great Depression as well. She was young and, you said your mother had to get a job when she was, like, what, 3 years old or something? What
Between
age?
2nd and 3rd grade,
Or
she got
2nd
her
and 3rd
first
grade, yeah.
job, so that
But
she had money for school clothes and school shoes.
yeah, but I mean, I feel like that generation is still trickling down on us.
In some ways, that doesn't bother me so much because my mother did it,
Yeah.
but what I think is really important is to understand that you need to be careful of it, okay? So
Mhm.
when money becomes status, really, money's just a tool in your hands, it's not a sign of status. You're not trying to win people over and say you're better than whatever, or, when you look at people who are truly financially successful, they're not interested in projecting out how much they have to be accepted into an organization
For
or a group.
what you're doing.
Right, they just don't care,
Yeah,
okay? They're
yeah.
confident in who they are when they have a healthy relationship with money,
Mhm. Totally,
okay?
yeah.
And you sort of look at that and you say, if you have to wear a certain outfit, okay, if you have to wear a certain set of pearls or clothing or whatever, or jewelry in order to be part of a group, my response is find another group.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And that's where that's starting to heal and looking within and
Yep.
figuring out, like, who you wanna surround yourself with.
Right, and that's the other thing, it's sort of like my mother, she built it, she did it, she and Earl built it out.
Mhm.
And my stepfather just died, and he
Yeah.
was an amazing man, absolutely amazing man, okay? And he and my mother built a great marriage. They
Mhm.
really did, okay? So, it's one of those things that's like, they lived the way they wanted to live.
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah. Well, And again, I told you earlier, I'm so sorry for your loss and everything and being able to be on this today because it's so fresh and raw for you. But for your Harmony Wealth Academy, tell
Yeah.
everyone how they can get in touch with you. I will include it all in the show notes, of course. But
Okay.
yeah.
I have the Wealth Academy, and the idea behind the Wealth Academy, and you'll have the link for it. You enter in through a free 5-day sprint. And the idea is it's 5 minutes a day for 5 days.
Wow, that's incredible.
Okay, well, here's the thing that I realize. We all are attention starved, okay? And we are all time starved. And we have the attention spans feel frequently of ferrets because of stress and everything else we do. So everything I do is designed to be compact. So you see something, you think about it, and then you act on it. And you set that into a system and a rhythm within your life. If it takes over your life, you're not going to do it. If it's overwhelming, you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
We build this out over time. You didn't develop these habits yesterday, and you're not
Hmm.
going to change them or correct for them and align them with where you want to go immediately. You've got to build this over time. And
Hmm.
so the program is 5 minutes a day, 5 days a week, 5 days, and then you're done. There is a workshop afterwards. You identify the money archetypes that are operating in your life, and then there's a workshop to understand the antidote to it, how to identify that. And then what we do within the program is we walk you through the psychological process of changing that and identifying that, understanding risk, understanding what you're looking at. We build up defenses. And while that's running in the background, we allow you to connect into professional software and you can see where your money is going. And
Hmm.
that will allow you over time to then further in that first course, start attacking the cash flow. I'm not asking you to start making massive changes with your budget until you A, have some defenses and B, have the emotional grounding to be able to make it stick. Okay. Yeah, you're going to have to do it, but that's not first. We've got to address the issues underneath.
Okay.
And while we do that too, while we do debt, we're also building up the emergency fund. The reason why we do this at the same time, it may be harder, it's under one category, is that if you are not prepared with some basic defenses, and if something happens and you don't have an emergency fund, all the effort you've made to pay off the debt is going to go out the window and you're going to wind up back in debt.
Yeah.
I need you to put yourself on a solid foundation. And the solid foundation is debt management as well as the emergency fund. And we'll
Hmm.
talk about what that is. Again, there are no hard and fast rules beyond the fact that you can't spend more than you make.
Right.
And you have to follow the laws of the land. That's another one. Um, Inflexible on that one. Here's what I would say to you is that this is all masterable. This can be done. I've seen regular people do it. It's a question of how badly do you want it? How badly do you want your financial freedom? Are you willing to risk a little bit of a discomfort and accept, hey, you know what? I remember the worst financial moment of my life. I remember that pain. I'm going to hold on to it and say, you know what? I don't ever want to feel like that again. So I'm willing to go through the process to undo that and prevent that from ever happening.
Yeah. And so anybody, any age, even if they have $1, they can do this program.
Okay, so first of all, the money sprint is free.
Yeah.
And just starting to have that awareness is important. I have two separate ways of being in the program. One is the regular standard program. The other one, and that's for really adults. Once you get to a point where you're earning well and you're succeeding in your career, and you sit there and you go, my God, how do I overcome this? That's that program. But if for young adults, people, let's say 20 to 30, we have a lift off program. We
Mm.
do the defenses, we don't have as much of the correction to do usually with people who are like 2022, but we literally teach the first part of Envision, but we also provide some life building skills in there. So there's two different pathways based on where you are in life, but the same concepts are there. And then if you want to continue with it, of course you can, but there's two different portals to get in. And
That's
it all
amazing.
starts with the money script.
So an 18-year-old, it would be great for an 18-year-old to start that.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah.
Because you wanna start off on the right foot. If you're gonna go to school or you're gonna go to training and you're gonna do different things and you may have to take on debt, what are you taking on? Understand what you're looking at. Why are you doing it? I want you to understand the ROI. I've seen people who have done phenomenally well who didn't go to college, and I've seen people who have master's degrees, graduate degrees, and can't find themselves on a map with coaching and help.
Right. Yeah. It goes both ways. I mean,
It does.
this is the educate and this is education we don't get in school.
Right.
So that's what you were saying. Well, Monica, this has been awesome. I know we went a little bit over. I apologize. I want to be respectful to your time, but thank you so much for sharing this. I think this is going to be really enlightening, and I want it to be a wake up call for people with trauma that are going through their journey to really listen to this because it really does affect how you spend your money, what you spend it on, and your priorities and your relationship with that. So, wealth of knowledge. I could talk to you for 5 more hours if we had the time to do that, but I will include all of that. And any last minute, real quick tidbit before we go away?
The way I look at this is a couple of things. What I do at its base is help you create internal structure while you're learning an external structure,
Mm,
okay? So that you can actually get rid of the chaos.
yeah.
And a lot of the skills are transferable to other areas. I
Mhm.
dislike seeing people feel vulnerable. I understand what vulnerability feels like. I felt it. And I don't wish this on anybody. I know you can do it. It's just a question of starting. And the other piece is I look at it like this way. You're a survivor. And sometimes adversity makes you stronger as
Mhm.
long as you can actually learn to master some piece of this, the system to get stronger. So I'm as sympathetic as it comes. You and empathetic. I get it. You can do this. You
Yeah,
don't have to stay where you are. You can move forward.
that's
And
amazing.
one last thing, I will say one thing. Any one of your listeners, if they use Rockstar Tracy as a code, they're going to get a discount. It's going to be significant. So I'm happy to support your participants. I'm happy to support your listeners. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and to them.
And thank you for offering that discount code for them because I think that'll maybe give people, okay, well, maybe I'll give it a try and see. And then
Yeah.
they can learn so much about themselves. You're not learning about money, you're learning about yourself as a person and you give them the skills they need to be confident in that arena.
That's the thing. Confidence is really when your subconscious knows that no matter what happens, you can handle it. You've got the skills, you've got the temperament, you're
Yeah.
prepared. You can't fake it. You can't lie to your subconscious. You can do this.
I know.
You can't. I mean, I know people do. It's like you can shout all the affirmations you want into the mirror. If your subconscious knows that you are lying to yourself, subconscious is going to do what it needs to do to protect it. And
Yeah.
why do that? Why do it?
Yeah. Well, I love it. This has been so great. Thank you so much. I know you've had your own journey too, which makes you so trustworthy. I would have no problem working with you because it is hard to find people have gotten burned, and there's
Yeah.
a lot of people out there that don't have the right intentions.
The way I will say this to you, and I mean this, and I say this, when you're in the academy, I want you to take a break from actually meeting with financial advisors.
Yeah.
I'm not selling you financial products. I want you to learn to understand what's out there and how you make those decisions. I want you to take a break. If something catches on fire and you need to make a decision that's very different, we shift. While you're in there, it's an educational component. We're not recommending. We want you to learn. If you want to work with us, that's different, but you're coming in to learn.
Right.
So it's pitch free while you're in it. When you wanna make a decision, that's fine, but while you're there, we want you to take a break.
And it
Mhm.
sounds very simple, and the way you're providing the package sounds very attainable and not intimidating at all.
I'm so tired of people being afraid of their money. I'm so I look at
Yeah.
this, it's a tool. You're not afraid. Think of all the tools you use on a daily basis. First time you drove a car, you probably were a little
Yeah.
intimidated, but you
Yeah,
learned
I
it.
write with this pen. It's a tool. I'm not
Right,
afraid of this. Same
right.
thing with money, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for everything you do. I really appreciate
Monica, thank you. You're a total trauma rock star yourself with your
it.
journey. And thank you for bringing your wisdom and really your compassion to helping
Thank you.
people understand this because I can feel it. Like, I can really feel that you're passionate about it and you really care. So, thank you so much. And thank you for your time and have an amazing rest of your day.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Thanks. The content on this podcast revolves around personal life experiences and is meant to serve as a learning tool. I am not a certified therapist or medical expert. This podcast doesn't offer medical, psychological, or professional advice. If you're curious about your mental or physical well being, feel free to reach out to a licensed healthcare professional for assistance.